Good day, everybody. Hello. Welcome to this Tasman webinar talking about BI migrations. It's a pleasure to organize this for you in this hot summer month of July. Thank you, everybody, for attending. It's appreciated and of a hard-working Tuesday for everybody, I'm sure. We're going to make it worth your while. We're going to talk about a bunch of different, very interesting topics when it comes to BI migrations. We're going to talk a bit, maybe more high level about what makes for a great BI tool in 2025, 2026. And yes, we're also going to touch upon how to then use it as a platform to run your AI strategy on top of as well. So those are the sort of hidden surprises that we will scatter throughout this presentation. With me today to help with all of that are our friends at Paired and Omni. Paired is a former client of us at Tasman. Is very happy that they're able to share some of their migration stories. And then Omni is one of the premier modern BI tools out there, which is interesting because we're going to ask Liam later to demo some of the principles that we talk about today here. So with me on the call is Matt. Matt is head of data at Paired, has been at Paired now for I think about 2 to 3 years. We worked with Matt a couple of years ago to build data models and a data platform for Paired, and Matt is now extending the team, making sure that data-driven insights makes its way to the subscription app decisions that Paired has to take on a day-to-day basis. Liam McCarthy is Solutions Engineering Head at Omni. You might have seen Liam already speak at a couple of meetups, for instance, over the last 6 months, quite active in the community, preaching the gospel of what modern BI should do and what it certainly should not do. Hi, Liam. And then we also have myself, Thomas. I'm co-founder, CEO at Tasman. At Tasman, we specialize in accelerating data capabilities for fast-growing companies. So we don't just do BI migrations. We help you build data models, tracking infrastructure, try to understand what the leanest way is to get to insights for fast-growing businesses where decisions are really critical. All right, without much further of all of that, just taking you quickly through the agenda, we're going to talk a bit about the hidden cost of obsolete BI or friction in BI tools. We're going to present you with a nice BI migration readiness self-evaluation framework. We'll make that available afterwards as well. You get it via email. There's a couple of dimensions that we can talk through here as well. What makes for a great BI tool? We've put our brains together and thought about how we can formalize this a little bit more to give you as much insight here as possible. Demo what modern BI looks like today and what makes it modern and what makes it useful. And then we'll talk through the sort of migration myths a little bit as well, like what's typically what we see at Tasman, having done this about 60 times over the last 6 years, what makes for a good migration and what certainly does not make for a good migration, and what should you actually think about when you think about BI. I should also say, we're going to kick off a poll here straight away, make this interactive. We're going to start to understand how you currently rate your BI migration readiness on a scale of 1 to 5. Do you think you're ready to migrate? Is that something you're considering actively over the next couple of months? Is it something you might do in the next year or so? Or is it something that isn't really on the radar, but you want to explore the options out there? So the scale there is 0% all the way through to 5. 5 is 100% readiness. So please submit your vote. We'll go back later to this and see what the sort of distribution looks like, and particularly how it pertains to what we think is important in migrations, but keep that in mind. All right, Liam and Matt, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. So what I always like to do here is make sure that at the very top of this, before we go further, I actually take you through the takeaways of what you're going to remember after the talk today. So the scar tissue that we have at Tasman and takeaways that we want to sort of make sure you remember here. One is that if you've got friction in your BI tool, activation of BI platform, usage of it, typically that signals some amount of decay, not just in your BI tool, but in your whole data platform. And it's important to take that as a very serious data point. Secondly, don't take it personal either. It's very normal in fast-growing organizations and data teams that built up legacy, organic craft over the years to get to this point. But luckily, there are ways to get you out of this. Maybe it's migration. Maybe it's just changing your current approach. We'll talk you through the different options there on the table. But if I would just make sure that you take away 3 points today, it's these 3 points here. We'll get back later to what they actually mean. All right, so let's start by talking a bit about BI friction. I'm just going to talk for 2-3 minutes, and then I'm going to hand over to Matt to talk about what it actually means in a real day-to-day business. But talking about real day-to-day businesses, one of the clearest examples I can give around BI friction is probably just a simple view like this. And it's not chosen for a particular brand name on there or something along those lines, but I just want to give you an example of what we used to think of as state of the art, say 5-6 years ago, might have built itself up into a lot of cruft and legacy here. What's the problem with this type of explore or data set setup? It's not the fact that it looks like this. It's the fact that you got 153 fields in here. And this is actually a fairly well-structured one that comes out of a demo of this platform itself. And 153 fields means that you're probably going to have about what is about 11 or 12 different date fields without a clear amount of explanation here. And in our view, this is one of the clearest examples of where if you just let a business stakeholder loose on this, well, the sort of most common scenario that you get out of this is a field like this where you get a bunch of errors because your business stakeholders, your head of marketing, might not necessarily know how to properly deal with this explorer or which types of date combinations they can use in a particular analytical use case. And again, this is probably one of the more better designed examples of what you can build in a tool like this here. The result of this, whereas of course for a data team this is easy to fix, the result of this happening a bit too much is all of your business stakeholders well, the reaction being illustrated by this over here. It's something that at Tasman we see time after time after time after time after time. It takes a long time to build trust, and it doesn't take that long to burn all the trust or say, hey, look, this is not working for me in whatever way. That's just one example. I think that what we see is there's actually a bit of resignation in the industry about this. One of the reasons that we organize this webinar. There's actually 4, I think, types of normalization happening here. So first of all is normalization, a little bit of dashboard sprawl. Most organizations that have a slightly bigger data team or have had a BI tool for a while end up with hundreds of dashboards. Zero trust because these dashboards might have names _final, _final, final, v2. Some dashboards might be maintained by John, who hasn't been with the company in 2-3 years. You get the picture, right? If there's dashboard sprawl, typically it's a sign of a problem in how you set up your BI activation layer. The second thing is the result of this almost is that there's very poor adoption of the BI tool, and the sort of biggest symptom there is that you still see marketing teams exporting data into Excel themselves and running their own pivots. Very common scenario as well, particularly in fast-growing teams with a relatively lightweight data team. So it's essentially you're paying for the Ferrari, but everybody is still riding bikes on a day-to-day basis with all the resulting reconciliation problems that you get from there. The third one is slow queries, queries that give you the time to grab a coffee before the results are back. It's not just a BI problem, it's typically a warehouse and data model problem as well, but a lot of folks we know are building BI dashboards, maybe not exclusively, but for sure some of them are raw data. And that's then one of the results you get is that your queries are very slow and that there's no real way of speeding them up without paying for massively over-engineered data warehouses out there. I have to say that there's a problem in the industry around great data modeling as well, but it's a separate webinar and a separate talk. And then the fourth one is just analysts, themselves, the bottlenecks here. If you are the people building most of the dashboards because self-serve isn't really working, because you want to curate the BI experience for most of your business stakeholders, then, well, you're going to be the main blocker here. And it might take 2 or 3 weeks before you can get around to what should be a very simple change request, like adding a new pivot to a particular chart or giving a little bit more of Explore functionality out there. Now, this should all sound fairly familiar. I hope most of you have solved, maybe not all, but most of these problems in your organization. But for some reason, we've sort of normalized this in the industry as the sort of cost of doing business as a data team. But I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be like that, because for well-run modern data organizations, the sort of standard that we should strive for is that you have self-serve analytics in minutes, that you can do analytics at the speed of thought, that you're able to trust the metrics and know exactly which metrics pertain to what business team, pertain to what set of definitions that you're looking at, and that you're, as a data team, that you can run as internal consultants. That's what we try to strive for. As I say, there's a big difference between dreaming and what makes for actual reality, but I hope that at the end of this webinar, you've got a good idea of how you can go from what you might consider normal at the moment to a more effective internal data team. And then, of course, what we haven't even talked about is more than the reality here is building AI functionality on top of your BI platform, because we think it's one of the most logical and organic places to start building analytical agents on top of. if you are already suffering from 500 plus dashboard sprawl, it's going to be very difficult. So this is an important AI strategy piece as well. All right. I should also say, we have an open questionnaire Q&A module in here. We're going to have about 10-15 minutes at the end to talk through all the questions. So please don't hesitate to put your questions in there. We want to see your thoughts. We want to hear what you're thinking about that. And we will do our best to answer as extensively as possible. All right. With that being said, I'm going to hand over to Matt, who's going to talk us through what this actually looks like in real life and how they think at Barrett about migrations here.
Thanks, Thomas. Cool. Hey, all. So yeah, at the beginning, I'm just going to give a little bit of context of where we were as a company when we decided to migrate, and yeah, what is paid. So basically, we're a B2C subscription app with the goal to bring couples closer. And we're quite a small startup. We're around 40 people. So hopefully, yeah, after I give all the context, you guys will be able to relate. Or not. But we're a small startup with around 40 people. Data resources are limited, so it's only 2 of us in the data team, basically having the ownership of the whole pipeline from data engineering to delivering insights. So there's not a lot of time that we can put into writing lookmls and things like that. We're really focused on bringing the insights to the business. So want to automate basically everything below that step. And the cost as a startup, costs are important. I mean, costs are important for every business these days now more and more, with everyone kind of optimizing for sustainable growth and profit. So that's really important for us. And it was actually one of the reasons for the migration. And I think all of people here, I've seen heads of data engineers. I think you should have a rough understanding of what the cost of the data platform is in your company and where there are areas to optimize this. The risk of not doing that is that the exec team or the senior management is going to take ownership of that cost for you and and tell you what to do. So it's good to be on the front foot with that. And then the company generally has good data literacy, but the efficiency is important for us because again, we're a small company. We want to move fast. And yeah, we used Looker as our BI platform and decided to move to Omni after doing some research. And how did we did that research? So yeah, you can see the migration readiness framework here, which is sort of around the lines of how we thought about, are we ready to migrate? Where should we migrate? So this is something that is going to be sent to you after this webinar. But basically, there are 5 different dimensions that you're going to be scoring yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not really ready to 5 being absolutely ready. And those dimensions are technical bottlenecks, business user frustration, modern data stack alignment, scalability, growth constraint, and strategic readiness. And there's also some penalty points on the next slides that you're going to subtract if you're hitting any of these friction flags. So you've recently done a massive Looker customization, or you have a very complex Looker integration. Depending on these points, you're going to subtract the points. But I'm going to talk in more details around those 5 dimensions based on how we would basically score ourselves. So yeah, as I said, we were using Looker when I joined. I wasn't really a Looker expert, so I came kind of like with fresh eyes. I've been a long-term Tableau user and then other BI tools, but I've never really used Looker. So there were pretty obvious things straight away that I found that are kind of not with they're not going with time. We're in 2025, and I thought that we are a little bit stuck in the past. But going one by one, the technical bottlenecks that we kind of found is there were some issues with GitHub integration that were not like easily solvable. It has a complicated UI. It's a tool that has been on the market for quite a while now. And there's a lot of great features, and there's lots of them, which can be a good thing, but can also kind of, make the learning curve a little bit steeper. It's not built for self-serve, in my opinion. I don't think it's easy as a non-technical person to just go in and start building dashboards. And then we had some issues with slow running queries. So overall, on the technical side, I scored ourselves as a 5. And some of these things led to, the points in the next dimension. So the business user frustration. I was frustrated because I had to spend time building lookmls for people instead of them being able to kind of manipulate metrics themselves easily. The stakeholders were frustrated because they had to go to me to do those things, and they just couldn't do it themselves. And just generally, kind of the design of Looker, was not very appealing to me. I think it does feel a little bit old school. Again, all my own opinions. You can disagree. Then on the modern data stack alignment, I don't think Looker is a very modern tool. It has a lot of features, but some of the kind of recent things like AI agents, all these things are not really coming in time. Which is not great. You want the BI tool to be adopting new trends as fast as possible. And then we were also looking for seamless integration with dbt. So we have Snowflake, dbt on top of Snowflake, and we want to have a nice connection with the BI tool where we can modify models, export models, all these kind of things. And then on scalability and growth constraints, we didn't want to scale on bad foundations. I found Looker to not be a good tool for me specifically. So I just didn't want to grow hundreds of dashboards on something that I know we're gonna eventually move from. And we're a small company, so we didn't have the problem that Thomas mentioned around 500 dashboards, but in a bigger organization that can easily happen. And then strategic readiness, is the business ready to migrate? And here I think that money basically talks loudest. And if you go to your exit team or senior management team and say, look, we can have a tool that's equally as good or better for less money, that will not take a lot of effort to migrate, it's kind of a win-win situation. And if the business case is formulated like that, I think it's quite an easy case to win with the exits. And it was the case for us with moving from Looker to Omni. So yeah, overall, we got a score total of 20. And what does that mean? So on the next slide, depending on how you scored yourself, and by the way, we had no penalties on like complex Looker integration and anything like that. So just a pure score of 20, which means that we have quite a strong technical and strategic readiness, and that we should probably consider migrating. So yeah, that was our journey. And yeah, looking forward to all the questions at the end.
Yes, I think given that Matt has agreed to spill all the beans here, ask all your questions about their migration to Omni in the channel. Not in the least because this was 3 or 4 months ago, but they're still happy with Omni, of course, as well. So we can ask him all of that later in the Q&A. All right, thank you very much, Matt. That makes total sense. The migration framework itself we'll share again at the end of this talk and as a nice document that you can share with everybody in your team or everybody that is looking for all of this. Just to be clear, I mean, there are really good reasons to not migrate as well, right? I think in the case of Baird, it was clear that the self-serve hadn't really worked very well. It was also clear that the current solution was quite expensive and that it was sort of not evolving as quickly as Baird was thinking, and therefore the migration made a total sense for them. All right. What I'd like to talk about then, maybe take a bit of a step back and again from what we are seeing in the market, what sort of trends are, what the sort of 5 dimensions of BI fit are. And then we're going to talk about how one of the examples here, Omni, kind of maintains those dimensions in one way or the other. So first of all, the sort of selection criteria that we have, and these sort of rhyme with the framework that we have over there, but this is really about how you select a new tool rather than whether you're ready for migration. performance and scalability, right? So this is not just about querying speed. This is also about decision speed, making sure that your insights are actually leading to better business decisions, leading to better business outcomes. That involves activation, whether users are using it. It also involves, do you have a scalable data model so that when you're changing your HubSpot for Salesforce, in your growth of your company, that you don't have to rebuild all of your dashboards straight away. So those are the sort of key considerations. We look at how modular the tool is and how easily you can scale it. Live query performance on your data volumes, of course, as well. There are tools out there now that are really a lot more sophisticated than running a new, completely uncached SQL query against your data every single time. Looker already did a bunch of that, but now you've got tools built on DuckDB, for instance, that make it even easier. And that's something that Liam can talk about in a second. The second dimension, I would say, is around governance, it's around trust. You want a tool that can easily query from a single source of truth. We're quite opinionated about this at Tasman because we work primarily with fast-growing companies. We see that the single source of truth should be maintained in your data warehouse and not just in your BI tool. That is one of the great preconditions to building a scalable BI platform that can be used by any data consuming system. And that means you got to have a tool that allows you to query single source of truth without having to necessarily build massive one big table approaches or incredibly complicated star schemas. So having a tool that understands, staying away from the semantic layer as a branding term, but that a tool that understands the presentational layers of your data model well, that can write complicated SQL queries that you can maintain and govern properly. And the trust itself is not just about permissions. It's about metric consistency as well. It's not just about security. It's about confidence in your numbers. It's also not just about auditing trails, even though those are important these days. It's also about accountability to the business. Are you actually building the reports that business trusts and can rely on? All right. Then flexibility, I'd say that means that you're building a tool, if you want to use a tool that's not just drag and drop, or that's just a big explore without any guardrails, as I showed at the very top, that it's a tool that can really grow with you, that can fit around multiple different use cases you have, that can fit around, say, a spreadsheet-based visualization for your FP&A or finance teams, but it can also easily fit around a really nicely designed set of dashboards that you're building for the marketing team. So something that works with all of those frameworks and can grow with you. That's the thing that for us enables that analysis and exploration at the speed of thought that we're trying to aim for here. Monostack integration, what do we mean with that? It's not just compatibility with modern data stack tools like dbt running on top of Snowflake, Databricks, and so on and so on, because that's table stakes, that's commoditized. I think modern data approach here means CI/CD, version control, integration with a proper Git repository, so you can run in your CI/CD pipeline a development analytics pipeline, for instance, without having to build 2 or 3 versions of every single dashboard. It means observability compatibility. It means compatibility with sort of dictionary tools that you might be looking at. It means monitoring tools. All of those different things require a different way of building your BI tool than might have been the standard 5-6 years ago. And then, of course, native dbt integration, making sure it all can be run from within your BI tool and integrate neatly with how you build the rest of your data stack is quite critical here as well. It's about amplification and not just duplicating responsibilities or trying to duct tape it all together. The only duck will allow is the DuckDB doc here. Then the fifth one is around the cross-team adoption, whether what you're looking at is actually measured in stickiness of daily active users. So adding a little bit of product analytics to the mix here. You're looking not just for your head of marketing to look at the dashboard once, but to actually really come back to it every single morning to see how the numbers have changed based on the latest campaigns. That's what you want. That's the type of real short feedback loop analytics there. I should also say that a great BI tool implementation, it's not a one-stop shop, right? It's not that you go away for 2 months and build a perfect dashboard for your CMO. You have to sort of build a V1 very quickly, show them the art of the possible, and then probably iterate 4 or 5 times before you get to the thing that they're actually going to be using on a day-to-day basis, and the tool needs to be able to accommodate that as well. So it's about DAUs, not just about licenses or seats that you pay for. Then I will probably say the sort of different, how shall I say, going from the dimensions to what modern BI looks like is just one example here. But Liam, I wonder if you want to take the stage now and talk a bit about how Omni, as just one of those modern BI tools, how you sort of take those dimensions and fill them in on your side. And for that, I think you probably have a few slides here and then maybe even a small demo if we're lucky, right?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Thomas. If you want to maybe go to the next slide here. So the first slide that I want to do is just to show a little bit about what are some of the broader challenges that we see here. Why do people come to us looking to migrate? Matt perfectly described his experience with Looker, where that requirement to code everything into LookML ahead of time was slowing down and creating a bottleneck. And that's a really common challenge that we do see, but it is just one of the many challenges that we see. So that's one side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is people are able to actually build too many things, maybe a little bit too easily. There's no core foundation of governance in what we're building. And so we've no idea if metrics are correct, or if we ever need to go back and rebuild something or change the underlying field, it's very, very difficult or impossible to do so. And then there may be a case of actually, maybe you're using a tool which is more of a technical fit. You have to write SQL for everything. It maybe served your purpose at some point when it was all engineers in the business as you were growing. But now you want something, you're starting to bring in sales reps, you're starting to bring in marketers who want a little bit more of a point and click UI. And that's another reason why we see folks starting to kind of look for a migration. All of these tools that you're seeing here on this slide, they're all great tools. They're all tools that do things really, really well, but they may not fit you for every kind of point in your business evolution, right? The quick and dirty tools are great when you're getting things set up, but over time, then you may be tempted to go to one of the tools that have, heavy governance, but then you might find that then slows you down. We believe that you shouldn't have to make decisions on this. You should be able to, when you want to build something quickly, be able to do so, whether that's point and click, whether that's AI, whether that's SQL, but then have it all have an underpinning layer of governance, which means that if you do want to solidify those metrics and make them maintainable and make them shareable into the future, you can do so at any time. If you could go to the next slide there, please, Thomas. So that's kind of the part of the core kind of architecture that we're thinking about, and I'll go back to that in a moment. But also a big part of why folks end up not really using self-service BI tools, even though they have been sold on the idea of self-service BI tools, is that the actual way that they interact with those tools don't necessarily don't align with how they want to interact with the tools. So, if maybe I'm an engineer and self-service to me means writing SQL. Or maybe I'm the CEO and self-service to me means using natural language. Maybe I'm a CFO and self-service to me means using something like an Excel spreadsheet or Google Drive. Again, they are all totally valid ways to interact with data. And you should look going forward that a tool that you choose should be able to facilitate all of those as first-class citizens. And so we've got a couple of examples here, and I'll actually walk you through these in our Omni demo in a couple of moments. But being able to start off with a question using natural language, being able to kind of either continue to iterate on that conversationally, or jump out into a more traditional BI experience where you can use point and click. If you want to go and calculate something, to not have to go and learn a new proprietary language, but being able to use spreadsheet calculations to be able to actually do that. And if you want to leave all of that kind of BI world behind and just write some SQL, that you should be able to do that as well. So these are the kind of core ways that we are exposing analytics to our end users. And I'll jump through these in the demo in a couple of minutes. Before I do that, perfect, Thomas. That was the perfect cue for you to change slide. So yeah, I just want to talk briefly then about, well, from a more kind of architectural perspective, how are we doing this? And this is, again, on a high level, but the idea being that underneath everything, we want to have a semantic model. Matt was talking earlier about that kind of challenge he had with Looker, where it was around his speed of development of being able to generate that semantic model. And that's where the challenge can come. Your semantic model should be quick to iterate, which he found it wasn't in his previous tool, and hopefully now with Omni, he's finding that it is quick to iterate. But then now he can actually go and our customers can have this easier kind of synergy between the semantic model that the data team is creating, so they have that scalability in the future, but then how their end users are also interacting with the data. So that your core data team can go, whether you're 2 people or 200 people, you can build that foundation of that semantic model. And that could be super lightweight. It could just be, here's all the tables we want people to be able to see, or it could be a much more heavily curated experience. You can then expose that to your end consumers, the people in finance, people in sales, people in product. They then be able to actually self-service on top of that and perhaps iterate on top of that model within a kind of a sandbox or a workbook environment. And it can live there forever if you wanted to. Or if they build something that's actually interesting, to allow them to be able to actually, be able to contribute back to the data model by allowing the data team to codify the business logic that those end users have actually created. And in terms of what that semantic layer kind of provides, obviously being able to make decisions with confidence, being able to quickly fix broken dashboards, that's important, and controlling access to sensitive data, but also more and more this ability to get accurate and explainable answers with AI is becoming a huge part of why we're seeing folks gravitate towards having a semantic model underneath all of this. So if I may, oh yeah, sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
No, that's fine. You may.
Well, thank you very much. So let me start sharing my screen and just give a really quick little demo of what I'm talking about here. So for this demo, I am going to focus really on those different touch points that your end users have to be able to actually interact with the underlying data. And more we're seeing those end users starting out with AI. I know this is like, I've been working in BI for quite a while, and I'm now starting most of the questions that I ask with Omni on our internal instance with AI. So this is Blobby, our cute AI assistant. You can white label him as well if you like. But I might come in here and say, show me the email addresses of users who ordered Levi's jeans in the last 30 days. Okay, and there's a few different elements of that question, right? So I'm asking for particular information about my users. I'm also asking for a particular brand. I'm asking for a particular type of product, and I'm also filtering on a certain date. I'm also asking for something that, like in a real data set, would be PII. So again, we want to make sure that's why we've got to have governance over the questions that people can ask here. But then we also have to have AI context within that semantic layer as well. So it was smart enough to say that, okay, it's going to filter for where the brand is Levi's based on this. It also is going to look at the category, and it's going to filter for jeans. So we're getting all of these data about our jeans. I might then be, maybe I'm like ordering data for the UK. So I might say filter for the United Kingdom. And again, I can have this sort of conversational over and back with our AI assistant to be able to go and iterate on those questions. And again, it's layering in that semantic layer to build those queries that it's going to build to get my result set, which again is going to take the sort of imprecise language that I use as an end user and translate that into the exact data that we actually have in our database, which in this case is like that. Actually, my country data is in 2-letter country codes, so it needs to go and translate that. So that's a really simple example of sort of like starting out my analysis using this conversational analytics. I could, of course, ask it to summarize the data and things like that. But let's say then, I've been able to get this initial answer in a very nice, easy, not overwhelming environment. But from here then, I might want to go and jump over into a more traditional BI approach, right? Maybe now I'm more of a power user. I want to start creating new fields. I want to touch and feel the data through here. So I've been able to click new analysis from here, jumping me from AI over into the more traditional BI workflow. And you see, I've got this full access now to those underlying fields from our semantic layer, but I'm not constrained by them. I can now start to build new things from this. So let's say, and as a really simple example, let's say I wanted to create a new field where I wanted to take the email domain out of each of these emails. That's something that, going back to Matt's LookML world, I would have had to go and ask Matt, hey, can you build this new dimension for me? And he'd have to, go and put it into the backlog. And maybe at some point he'd get around to it. And maybe in the meantime, I'd pull the data down into Excel and actually do it on the side. But now we've got this kind of shadow BI thing going on. With Omni, we want to give you those tools to be able to actually do this yourself without having to rely on the data team, but again, still doing that in a safe, controlled way. So to give you an example of how I could do that, I'm going to jump over here into my results tab. I'm going to add a little column into my table. sort of like how I would with Excel. And I could actually write a literal Excel formula in here to do this. If I was an Excel whiz, which I'm not, I could probably do it off by heart. But for the people like me who are not Excel whizzes, we again have AI to help us out. So I could ask it to extract domain from that email field. And that's going to kind of take the context about this table, and it's going to write the Excel formula for me to go and take the domains from those email addresses. When I say Excel here, I literally mean that the calculations, the formulas that we are using here, like this len, this find,
you're awakening some PTSD, I'm afraid, Liam. That's all.
They are literally Excel. And that even extends to like XLOOKUP, things like that, VLOOKUP, to be able to like join queries across tabs. So, this is really popular for our end users. But again, talking to that point of interoperability, right? Just because I've created this thing using Excel doesn't mean that it should live like that forever, right? Maybe now I want to take it out of the context of being an Excel calculation on this table, and I want to bring it into something that's going to be more reusable within my queries. So I can come in here and I can say, okay, well, let's take this and let's promote this to my workbook. You'll see here now, it's a field that's available in my field selector. So I could go ahead and I could clear everything that's in my query, and I could say, how many users do I have across each of these email domains? So I've taken something that was defined using Excel, and I've now converted it into an element within my data model for this particular workbook. Now, unbeknownst to me, because I'm a non-technical user in this scenario, the Excel there has been converted into SQL, and Omni has written the equivalent of our LookML, right, YAML, to represent this. But it hasn't cluttered our shared data model, right? So as an end user, I've been able to go and create this ad hoc thing. It can stay here forever, or you'll see here Omni's keeping track of the workbook model change. So this new fields that I've created, it only exists within this workbook. You can think of it like a sort of a sandbox environment. So it can be a one-off thing if I want it to be. But because I am actually an admin on this instance, I have the option to promote it to the shared data model. And so if I was to click that and promote it, that would now give access to everyone to that new field. And of course, you can integrate this with your Git version control so that it has to go through a branch and pull requests and things like that if you want to. But also, if you like to move fast, you don't have to. So, that's just like, obviously that's a kind of a very narrow example of a few different things, but I really wanted to kind of bring to life how we're giving you these different ways for end users to interact with data, how it feels comfortable for them, whether that's using AI, moving then from AI into the more traditional BI experience here with the point-and-click interface, being able to use that point-and-click interface in conjunction with the Excel calculations to create new fields. And then for those calculations to have multiple different places that they can live. They can live purely within a calculation. They can live within a particular workbook, which powers one dashboard, or they can live everywhere and have them available to all people.
Great. Thank you, Liam. So, yeah, that worked out well here. My smooth sort of window switcher. Thank you, Liam. And I think this was just a very quick demo of Omni. If you're interested in that, hit Liam up. Or look at the Omni content online. There's a lot more out there, but one of the things, for instance, on their approach to AI, and there's a couple of different flavors out there, is that it requires a strong semantic layer that Omni is a great place to start building, and therefore the sort of questions that you can ask in Blobby are questions that actually have a chance of answering correctly as well, as opposed to some of the other AI implementations out there. All right, thank you, Liam. Thank you for just giving this as an example. It's just one example of a modern BI tool. There's a couple of them out there. Liam already gave a short overview of the different other tools out there, but go check it out if you're if that's something you're considering. If you're then considering to move your BI tool, there's a bunch of different myths or sort of concerns you might have before doing that. The migration framework might have told you that you're 25 out of 25 to move. The BI selection setup might be something that already has told you that Omni is probably the best fit for you, but how do you then combat common objection patterns within your wider business? And there's three of them that we see a lot. First of all, too expensive. Hey, we've already paid for Tableau, Power BI, Looker, whatever it is. and we've built an entire ecosystem on top of it, where we need to sort of move out of the way from there. We need to stay on there. We can't really double this cost one way or the other. I'm not sure that's really true. So client example is that we helped one of our clients switch to Omni after major Looker overhaul really failed. So massive sunk cost. You can migrate to Omni in a couple of weeks. Actually, you can replicate quite a bit of the code. And in the case of the migration complexity, which we'll get to as well, there's tools to help you with that. Second, if it's too risky, right? So, hey, we might lose all of our dashboards. We need to redo all of the data modeling work. First of all, your data model should be quite independent as a layer in your data stack from your dashboards. If that's not the case, then your migration is not even your biggest problem. Or reconciliation, accuracy, scalability is probably your bigger problem, and that's something that we can also help with, of course, or help advise on. But advise at that point to really tackle your data model first. If you have a good data model in place, honestly, you can switch to a new BI tool quite quickly because it should already be configured as a bit of a thin layer on top of your data stack right now. So yeah, that sort of perceived risk of loss of work, access, business continuity, it's a fear of regression in many ways, and it sort of keeps you at a local optimum. And I don't think it's really true at the end of the day. A few weeks can really help you get beyond that, particularly if you plan the migration quite carefully. Third, too complex. Our data team is already overworked because of all of the dashboard change requests they're getting. They say they can't handle this migration. This is probably the most common pattern that we see. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation earlier this morning with exactly that objection against looking at the different BI tool. Honestly, that is probably also the biggest reason why you probably should move your BI tool if your data team is flooded with requests. The whole point is that you should select a BI tool that allows you to facilitate self-serve, facilitate your business end users to answer their own questions, therefore freeing up the time for the data team to help do the real either pipeline engineering, data modeling, or deeper insights. And so that's something where I would say that a couple of weeks to really get you to the point where you can make the migration happen smoothly is really worth it. Companies like Tasman can help, but also we've published a bunch of assets out there. There's a full migration playbook that we published a couple of weeks ago. We've built a little tool that allows you to, for instance, translate automatically LookML into the Omni type of modeling code. Honestly, this can be sped up to at least parity with what you currently have in Looker in a matter of days. So I don't think those are three sort of big objections, but I just want to raise them here because it comes up quite often. What we then want to do before we go into Q&A, and I see that there's a few really nice questions already in the list here, is just pop up that migration readiness framework again and ask you all to look at this. It's quite a big framework. Take a screenshot. We'll send it over in a PDF as well, and score your own implementation here. So we're going to launch a new poll to where you can rate yourself from 1 to 25, and we're very interested in the results here. What do people actually see as their internal sort of BI migration readiness now? I'm going to do it for Tasman as well, actually, as a migration readiness factor here. There we go. Nice. While everybody is doing this, and I see a few interesting results here already. I see high numbers here: 20, 17. There's a 5, which was me at Tasman. Don't forget to subtract the numbers here as well. While we do that, I'm already going to start giving the floor to our speakers here for the questions that we have gotten here. So Hoa asked whether there's any constraints that they should be aware of when integrating Omni semantic layer with BI tools. They're using Looker Studio at the moment to try cube.dev, but it doesn't really support the parameters when configuring the data sources. And I can imagine that it's something kind of semantic layer is a relatively new thing, but it's also quite complex depending on how you implemented it. Liam, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think this is probably quite a common thing that we see with these like headless semantic layers is headless semantic layers, for anyone who doesn't know, like it's typically like, it's a semantic layer that doesn't have a BI tool attached to it. And they can be great for, let's say I'm powering one viz on my web page, for example, and I want to build that viz using my own React frontend or something like that. I think that where they tend to fall down a little bit is when they want to actually integrate with a BI tool and to expect that you're going to have all the capabilities of that BI tool, because the reality is that BI tool was not built with that particular semantic layer in mind. and vice versa. The semantic layer was built to be generalized and not for that specific BI tool. So the kind of constraints that you mentioned there, like from using a particular combination of a headless semantic layer and a BI tool, they're quite common where the two have been developed separately compared to when the semantic layer lives within the BI tool, that obviously they are 100% compatible. That's also like not even speaking about the benefits of having the semantic layer closer to the end user, because that's what allows you to have, like that example I showed you earlier, where you can actually now start to have the semantic layer be something that the end users themselves can much more easily touch and feel, and even start to contribute to it in some ways.
Perfect. Thank you, Liam. It's insightful. I think, different systems, different setups. Sometimes you can't always orchestrate or architect it properly from the start. So yeah, then you have to roll with the raw material that you have, as we say in the Netherlands. What I want to do as well, Matt. So thank you so much for taking us through your thinking on your BI migration pathway. Just interested, how do you measure success here? So you're now 4 months later. How has this been successful in your point of view? What are the sort of biggest surprises in moving out, and do you already see the uptick in how people are using the tool?
Yeah, so I see there's a question around the single metric that best indicates a BI tool is enabling the business. Yeah, so there probably is a metric like that, just to tie into that question, but it's not easily measurable. So what you want to do basically is to increase the percentage of data augmented decisions that are made in the business. But you cannot measure that directly. So what we're looking for is the number of people that are viewing the dashboards, the number of people that are creating new dashboards, the number of people that are actually building their own metrics and pushing it to the semantic layer. But then also, are people sharing the dashboards on Slack? Are there being discussions around the data on day-to-day basis? And we see all of these things happening. Our marketing team, in order to measure their day-to-day performance and making the decisions whether to scale a budget on a given marketing channel, all of that is based on the data that we're serving to them via Omni. So these are the things that you kind of want to look for. You want to look for engagement, but not just like people going and viewing the dashboard and then doing nothing with it, but you want to see kind of like deeper engagement, discussions and some proofs that decisions are being made on top of the metrics.
Are you using some of the internal Omni analytics to look at this in your data team, Matt?
Internal Omni analytics, as in?
I think there's a way you can actually look at just like the old Looker systems. You can actually look at whether people are logging in actively, whether reports are being viewed quite a lot as well.
Yeah. So we look at that. We were looking at that in Looker as well, and in other software that we're using. It's all a very valuable thing because at the end of the day, if nobody is using it, then that's a problem.
Exactly. All right, cool. Let's move on. So a few questions that we got in the channel here as well. Maybe Liam, this is something for you again. So how many years should we expect from a modern BI tool before it becomes tomorrow's legacy system? I'm sure that our sort of approach to Looker here has not been the illustration, but yeah, it's funny how quickly this goes, eh?
As many years as it takes them to be acquired by Google.
Yes, absolutely. It's true.
No, I think that I can only speak for Omni here, but like one of the things we massively pride ourselves in is our pace of development. Hopefully anyone that's dealt with us has seen that in action. If anyone's interested, we post demos on our webpage every Friday. And it's an internal call that our engineers then do, and we chop it up and we show everyone exactly what we've been working on, which may or may not be interesting depending on what we're showing. But I think that for as long as we can keep that pace of development up, or anything close to that pace of development up, we will we'll hopefully stay at the forefront.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, we've always seen BI as a thin layer on top of a really good data stack, and that means that the more ways BI is actually able to meet business users where they make the actual decisions, which means iterating, because that the way business users make decisions right now is completely different from what it was 2-3 years ago. The amount of large language model supported decision making is quite high at the moment, particularly in well-run, fast-moving businesses. But as long as you stay close to the business users and can iterate very quickly, the right tool can really evolve with you. But it also requires, as a data team, that you evolve with that as well and really stay close to the marketing team, for instance. It's probably not sufficient for you to have built them a marketing dashboard in February 2024 and then sit around for a year and a half waiting until they come back to you. You should probably follow up with them every couple of months to make sure that the dashboard stays current, that it stays self-serve focused, and that it actually does what it needed to do. All right, so unless there's any further questions, what I'd like to do is just quickly repeat the takeaways that I want you all to take home and think about after today. So the final score evaluation, first of all, of what you gotten from the different answers to the poll, and there was a 17, an 11, a 7, and a 20. So the 20, yeah, you're ready to go. Start moving. Go talk to Liam. Go talk to other people as well. Get your sort of setup out there. If you scored 17, maybe okay, technically you're fine, but maybe a little bit more internal readiness. Build some allies internally. Try and chart out maybe how many people are currently not using the BI tool properly, and use that as a good building block to build on top of. If you're around 11, look, you're probably doing fine at the moment. Maybe there's a bit too much friction right now. Think about the myths if they're not over exerting themselves here, but otherwise don't worry too much about it. If you're 10 and below, hey, look, hold off, you're fine. Just look at this again in 6 months, 12 months, but keep monitoring usage, because that's at the end of the day your main leading indicator of whether people are using it for a business or not, as Matt hinted at. Thank you for participating in that, by the way. So the sort of takeaways that we have here of what we want you to think about is BI friction. If there's friction in using BI tool, it is not just the BI tool, it's the whole data platform that's at risk. So think about that. Second, if that's the case, even if you built the BI tool yourself 3, 4, 5 years ago, I mean, we actually built Pear's implementation of Looker 5 years ago. We're completely fine. Well, if we're a consultancy, of course, but we don't take it in any way personally that it might not have been used anymore 4 or 5 years down the line, because things change, teams change, data models change, businesses change. And the third one is migration always beats stagnation here. Stagnating usage of your data modeling, of your data insights tool, means that you're investing quite a bit of money in a data platform that does not meet the business where it matters the most, which is where they make the decisions. All right, and with that, I really would like to thank the panel here today. Mateusz Raczynski at Pear, thank you so much for coming over and sharing your details, lifting the veil on your internal mechanics here at Pear. Thank you very much. Liam, thank you so much for your wisdom and, of course, the Omni view on all of this as well. I hope people will check it out. There's other tools out there, of course, but I think Omni, as you say, has been evolving very, very rapidly, and the rapid pace of development is something that's impressive to see. I'm Thomas. It's very nice to have seen all of you here today. We wish you a phenomenal rest of this week and a phenomenal rest of the summer. We'll be back with you with more webinars and other content in September. And for those of you who couldn't join today, we will have recorded this. We'll share the recording, and of course, we'll send through the lovely BI readiness scoring rubric and the migration guide from Looker to Omni, so you can peruse this carefully and conscientiously when sipping an Aperol Spritz in Tuscany or whatever your holiday plans are. I wish you a phenomenal summer. See you later.